Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. During the spring of 2004, I was 19, even though I only looked to be about 14. I was all of 5 foot nothing and weighed about 100 pounds, soaking wet. That's if I was carrying laundry as well. My parents and aunt were vacationing in Mexico. I decided to opt out of this one, though, and stay at the house. I figured it would be a nice opportunity to have a quiet place to study for my upcoming exams. All I really had to do was clean the pool, collect the mail, and restock the fridge with groceries. I also had a plan of action that involved emptying her safe and rescuing her car in the event of a wildfire taking place or something. Her home was high up in the hills of Southern California. After all, it had a terrific view of Long Beach. I mostly spent my time in the massage chair in the guest room, playing music in the background while I pored over my psychology notes. Occasionally, I would sit out on the balcony as well and work on my tan a bit, or use the treadmill in the basement. Mostly, I was secluded in the air conditioning, trying to be productive. Every night, though, I never forgot to set the alarm and make sure the security cameras were working fine before I went to bed. On the fourth night of my stay, though, I was really focused on the books, and so I forgot to set the alarm. After it got dark, at about 1:30 a.m., I paused to take a brief break, and that's when I realized just how late it was. My stomach sank as I remembered the basement door was still unlocked. I had to secure that before setting the alarm. Before heading downstairs, though, I wandered into the study to get a look at the security cameras, just to be safe. I remember thinking to myself, what are the chances someone will actually be inside the house? Anyway, as soon as I finished processing that thought, I noticed a figure on the basement stairs in one of the cameras. I remember my mouth falling open and making a small croaking sound. It was a middle-aged, balding man with glasses, slowly making his way up the stairs. To make the situation even more unnerving, I could see in one of his hands, he appeared to be holding a balloon or something. I stared at the cameras as he reached the top of the basement stairs and looked around before cautiously trying to set foot into the kitchen. My first thought was to slam the door, lock it, and call the cops, but deep down, I knew it would take the police between 10 and 12 minutes just to make it out here, and in that time, the guy could easily overpower me and drag me off into the night. I suppose I could have hidden somewhere as well, but I didn't like the idea of trying to stay quiet while this guy wandered freely from room to room, searching for me. Instead, I decided to go on the offensive and try something that was both incredibly daring and amazingly stupid. I tiptoed back into my room, turned up the music, and then made a loud production of exiting the room, stamping my feet down the hall. I called out as loud as possible, "Marcus, I swear I heard something downstairs. Go put your shirt on and grab the key to the gun cabinet." I was positive my voice was quivering as I said it, but I figured the music playing in the background would hide the fact well enough. I paused for a few moments, waiting to see if he would call my bluff. When all I heard was silence from down below, I power-walked back into the study, locked the door, and checked the cameras again. Sure enough, he was scampering out the basement door like a frightened squirrel. I watched him run across the backyard, around the pool, and disappear between the hedges. As soon as he cleared the house, he let go of his balloon, and I watched it from my window as it fluttered away towards the Pacific. I ran downstairs and locked the basement door. Immediately, I set the alarm and called the cops. I also called my parents and my aunt and told them what happened. I asked them how I could rewind the footage to show the police. My aunt asked me why I didn't just hit the panic alarm on the security pad. I had to admit I hadn't even thought about that. To make a long story short, the police caught the guy a week later. He was sleeping in his car in the grocery store parking lot. Everyone always asks me what I thought the balloon was all about. If I had to guess, I think maybe it was a gift or something. The guy must have seen me a few times outside the house and assumed that I was alone. Maybe because of my appearance, he thought I was much younger than I actually was. I really have no idea if the guy is still in prison, but regardless of where he is, I hope he hears this and feels stupid that he got scared away by basically nothing, an empty threat by a panicked girl with all the strength of a malnourished gerbil. This happened almost 20 years ago, when I was 15 and still living back home with my grandmother and uncle. To provide some context, my grandparents had built a house together with their son, grandparents living on the ground level, and their son, my uncle, living upstairs. They'd pretty much built the home with their bare hands and the help of a few family members. So for my uncle, that meant working his 9-to-5 job, then driving to the construction site and working there until very late at night. They did this for almost 2 years, and I guess the stress of working nonstop, plus an ugly divorce he was going through shortly before finishing the house, made him become quite weird. I guess he developed some kind of psychosis or something. He stopped going into work because everyone there was watching him. No one was allowed to open any windows to let in fresh air because someone could break in, and all the doors in the house had to be locked at all times because otherwise gas would enter and the rooms would catch fire. It was lots of nonsense and paranoia like that. At the time, when I was about 15 years old, I moved to live with them for a few years, well, Grandma and my uncle. My grandfather had unfortunately passed away in the meantime. Even though my uncle never did anything bad, he was a very eerie person to be around, and I was regularly freaked out by him. For example, he had the habit of silently standing in a pitch-dark hallway in the middle of the night for God knows how long. Sometimes I would watch TV in the living room late at night, thinking everyone else was already asleep. When I got tired, I would switch off the TV and open the door to the hallway, then scream in terror because he would be standing directly behind the door, listening in the dark. This happened quite frequently. He always acted surprised I would get so scared because, in his mind, he was just keeping watch over me. Something else he did that I absolutely hated, sometimes when I was sleeping in my room, he would randomly barge in and check if everything was all right. And when I say barge in, I mean that literally. He would burst in as if he was expecting to see something horrible happening to me right at that moment. Now that you have some idea of his strange behavior, let me explain the creepiest night. I was lying in my bed, sleeping on an ordinary night. I don't know how late it was, but from my feeling, I would say I had slept for a couple of hours when I suddenly woke up. I didn't really know what awoke me at first, there had been no noise or anything, but for some reason, I woke up instantly, terrified, with my heart pounding and my eyes wide open. My breathing was fast and loud, so I tried to keep it down and listen in. I stayed like that for a couple of minutes until I'd convinced myself I'd just had a nightmare I couldn't recall. Then, though, I heard something outside my bedroom. In the hallway, the bedroom door was closed. It was the distinct creaking of one particular step in the stairway, the third one from the top, to be exact. Naturally, I thought it must be my uncle following his habit of creeping about the house in the middle of the night. A few seconds after that creaking, I heard super fast steps sprinting up the stairs, getting louder and louder until they suddenly came to a halt directly in front of my door. I just froze there and held my breath, half expecting my uncle to charge in at any moment, but he didn't. All I could hear was heavy breathing on the other side. My uncle must have been standing right in front of my door, but he wasn't doing what he usually did. That heavy breathing continued, and then a soft knocking began. This continued onward for almost an hour, and I stayed awake, terrified, unable to even move an inch. Eventually, I heard the sound of my uncle moving away. But needless to say, it was very hard to try and get any sleep. To this very day, I cannot explain why he behaved that way that night. I even considered if maybe I was just having a nightmare or a lucid dream. Maybe, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that was a real experience. It's just very freaky. I've long since moved out, but that experience still sticks with me to this day. So, this happened last year when I was house sitting for my neighbor. He was in the hospital for a few days, recovering from surgery. I had been asked to stay in the house and keep an eye on his cats for him. The house was pretty small, but it was on a nice, wide-open property right by the woods. There was this tiny swinging cat flap on the kitchen door, where the cats would come and go as they pleased throughout the day. The flap led into a screened-in back porch, and the house only had one bedroom. I chose to sleep on the couch in the living room. After cleaning up, feeding the cats, and watching some TV, I turned off all the lights and lay back down on the couch. I had my phone out now, and I was casually scrolling through Facebook. That was when I heard the flap swinging back and forth. From where I was in the living room, I couldn't see the door, the counter was in the way. I glanced over to see one of the cats scamper over and leap up onto my leg. I gave it a welcoming pat on the head and continued scrolling. After another minute, though, I heard the cat door make a noise again, a soft squeak this time. I didn't even glance over, figuring it was a second cat following the first back into the house. After a few moments passed by, though, I heard the squeaking sound again, and after another moment, it squeaked a third time. I looked up from my phone, wondering why the second cat was jumping in and out like that. I was wondering if I would have to scoop it up and put it in the bedroom myself. The door continued to squeak for another couple of minutes as the second cat continued to jump in and out. I finally decided I'd had enough of this noise. I put my phone down and sat up on the couch. I began to stretch a bit, and as I did, I happened to glance behind the couch. My blood froze. The second cat was right there, curled up in its bed in the corner. The first cat was still nestled between my legs. My confusion turned to fear instantly. Was there another animal on the back porch? Another cat, maybe? I slowly stood up and quietly made my way over to the back door, tiptoeing across the carpet in my socks. The door continued making its squeaking noises over and over again. I peered carefully around the counter and felt the sensation of my heart leaping up into my throat. At the same moment, my stomach dropped. By the faint rays of the nightlight in the hallway, I could see an arm reaching through the cat door, straining to get at the knob. The fingertips were brushing at the lock. For a few short seconds, all I could do was stare in terror, frozen by the surreal, silent reality of what I was seeing in front of me. It almost didn't feel real. The severity of this situation hit me all at once, and I realized that if this intruder got in, I was not going to stand a chance. I grabbed a large two-pronged fork, the kind used for flipping steaks on the grill, and in one swift motion, I stabbed that arm right below the wrist as hard as I could. There came a thunderous scream of pain from the other side of the door, and their arm was immediately retracted through the flap. The fork had impaled itself in the intruder, though, so it caught itself on the door. That produced a second loud scream, and the arm wrenched violently outside. I heard the fork clatter on the ground, and then I heard footsteps sprinting across the back porch and out the screen door. I immediately turned on the outside lights and caught a glimpse of a figure running toward the woods. Instead of calling the cops, though, I scooped up both cats and stuffed them into the same carrier. I grabbed my phone, my shoes, and sprinted out to my car, which was thankfully parked inside the garage. I drove up the road a couple of miles to my own place, and once I was safely inside, I called the police. The cops took half an hour to get to my place, and then another half hour of questioning before they continued down the road to check out my neighbor's house. They told me there was no sign the screen door had been broken into, and aside from the bloodstains, there was no sign of the intruder either. They put out an alert to local hospitals for a man with a stab wound on his right arm. The following morning, the police brought a dog out to follow the scent as well. But whoever the lucky intruder was, he was never caught. I kept the cats safe at my place until my neighbor was out of the hospital. It still shakes me to my soul, the idea that that stranger chose that house in the middle of nowhere, trying to get inside. If I hadn't decided to get off the couch when I did, this may have ended very differently. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.